Welcome to Module 3-B. In this module, we are going to learn about the important elements, important lessons about the Philippine Clean Water Act or Republic Act number 9275. Now, this is in continuation of our discussion on the anti-pollution laws. We have already discussed Module 3-A, which is on the Philippine Clean Air Act, and now we are ready to discuss the Philippine Clean Water Act. And so in this module, we have the following specific learning objectives. First learning objective, we want to define the important terms that are incorporated into the law, into the Philippine Clean Water Act. We want to define them, but defining them is not going to be sufficient for us to learn about the law. Of course, we want to tie these important terms together in order to outline the framework, at least the fundamental aspects of the framework through which the Clean Water Act operates. And lastly, we want to determine the meaning and implications of gross violations under this law, under the Philippine Clean Water Act, and compare it, distinguish it from gross violations under the Philippine Clean Air Act. All right. There are also some parts of the discussion where we do comparisons between common terms that are found in these two laws. All right, and so we start with our discussion on uh, definition of the important terms. Now, the first, or I think the most important term that is defined under this law, under the Philippine Clean Air Act, is the problem. Just like what the Philippine Clean Air Act did, no? It also defined the problem, identified and defined the problem. Here as well, the Philippine Clean Water Act, it also defines the problem. And so also the presentation or uh, the context uh, in which this very important term is defined would somehow be similar, no? To the notion or to the presentation of air pollution in the past module. And so we can start with an imagery of an environment with now clean water, no? Apparently clean water, right? No? Uh, and then we are going to compare them with this water, with not clean water. And so we ask again, no? What makes it clean, this one, and what makes this not clean? Again, we our first instinct would be we see it, right? Our first answer is that it's based on the visual elements of the photographs, right? And here you can see that the water is clear, perhaps that the water appears to be clean, while this one it's obviously and it appears to be not clean. All right, but the law would not have that valid uh, uh, baseline, no, to gauge whether the water is clean or not clean. And so again, just like the Philippine Clean Air Act, we have to uh, please zero in. We have to inspect it at a closer look, no? Let's just say, for purposes of representation, a clean water would look like this when we zoom in into this area. It would now show all the natural elements. No, these represent. This is not supposed to be a scientific presentation, but It's just a representation of what would it look like uh, uh, if the water is clean. All right, and so these represent the natural particles that are found in the water resources. All right, while uh, here, if we try to zoom in into that into this point, we can see that aside from the natural uh, particles, natural things that are found in the water resources, there are other particles, no, that are present, but they're not supposed to be there. Yet they are there because of some reason. All right, and so this here is a representation of, let's just say, it's pure state, and that one here, this one here, is the representation of its polluted state. But we have here in the middle, no, uh, a representation of, yes, all the particles that are naturally found are here, but there are some particles that are not supposed to be there, but it's not as much as the polluted state, no, would have. Okay, and it's called the acceptable state. No? It's very important that we point this out because the law, the Philippine Clean Water Act, even though a it is a law passed to combat water pollution, all right, um, it does not promise to keep water resources in their pure state. Of course, it promises to prevent water resources from achieving or from becoming from turning into a polluted state. And so this law uh, merely promises that it can reduce the amount of pollution, all right, and keep the water resources in their acceptable state. All right, that's a polluted state, and then therefore, because we identified that in that uh, comparison of scenarios, no, the problem there is the polluted state. Yes, the problem there is the polluted state because that's the threat against uh, the water resources. Okay, and so we have to identify, just like the Philippine Clean Air Act, this law identifies and defines, no, um, the problem. Here, the problem is water pollution, right? Problem is water pollution, and it is defined as uh, any alteration of the physical, chemical, or biological or radiological properties of a water body resulting in the impairment of its purity or quality. Now, highlighted in this definition are two key elements of water pollution as defined under the law. All right. Now, requires um, water pollution arises or occurs when, number one, there is alteration of the essential properties or characteristics of a water body, and the alteration, this kind of alteration, results into the impairment of the purity or quality of the water body. Now here, I'd like to take some moments in trying to compare the legal structure of the definition of water pollution and air pollution. Right? So if we try to compare water pollution and air pollution, water pollution, as I said, will occur under the law. It occurs when there's alteration of the essential properties of the water body, and or plus there's consequence of the alteration. However, if we try to recall our discussion on air pollution, the way the law is crafted and the way air pollution is defined under the law, it appears that air pollution will occur either when there's alteration of the essential properties of the atmospheric air, or when there is discharge to the atmospheric air of any substance that will have consequences, all right, that will likely create or render the air resources of the country harmful or detrimental to the health, or the utilization is injured. The atmospheric air utilization is injured. Now it shows that under this definition, air pollution may arise even upon showing that alteration, even upon showing of alteration of the properties of the atmospheric air, without need of showing that there's a consequence of that alteration. All right, or there's also another way of showing that there's air pollution under the law. No? As defined, air pollution may also occur when there's discharge into the atmospheric air, and the discharge will have a consequence that is under the law. The consequence is that it will render the air resources harmful, or the utilization of the air resources is injured. All right. So let's keep that in mind, that these two legal definitions are different because they are found in different laws. They have different legal structure, and so when we are asked, is there air pollution? Of course, let's consult the definition of air pollution under the Clean Air Act. Let's consult the elements that are provided under the Clean Air Act. And when there is a question on is there water pollution, let's resort to the elements from the definition of water pollution. All right, because these are two different uh, definitions. We are not to interchange them. All right, in our legal analysis of these two legal terms. All right. Now, the next question here is that, okay, we have defined already the problem. We have identified the problem, and we have defined the problem. The next question would be, what causes the problem? What are the things or items that cause the problem, that cause water pollution? And so in this part of the lecture, we'll have four, at least these four show the contributing items, contributing factors to the problem of water pollution. All right. First of them would be waste. All right, and waste is a general term which includes solid, liquid, semi-solid, contained gas, or other forms resulting from the industrial, commercial operations, or from community and household activities. All right, and whatever state it is in, no, it's when it's a material that results from human activities. All right, and it's a material that is now devoid of usage, or it has been discarded, then it then it is considered as waste already. Note the highlighted terms here, no, whatever the form. All right, as long as it's a material that results from human activities, no, industrial, commercial, etc., and that material is now devoid of usage and it has been discarded, that's already considered waste. And this is a contributing factor because whatever material that's devoid of usage and discarded, whatever waste that is produced, may end up in our water bodies, may end up in water bodies that will be now exposed to water pollution. All right. Now, zeroing in on the on one kind of, or one form of waste, the law also defines waste water. All right. Wastewater is defined as waste in liquid state, and because it's already in liquid state, it contains pollutants. All right. Now the law has to zero in has to define as well although it's defined already waste, no, as to encompass all forms of material, of any material that results from human activities, and that material has been discarded already, no more use, right? But this law also needed to define wastewater, no, waste in liquid state, because wastewater, when it comes into contact with a body of water, pollution is more or less instantaneous, no? Pollution, the alteration of the properties of the water body, and the impairment of the purity or quality is more or less upon that point of contact. There is already water pollution, because they wastewater will immediately commingle with clean water in a water body. Whereas some other forms of wastewater, some other form of waste may, especially the solid ones, may not have the same effect as a wastewater would have. All right. And then it related to wastewater would be another term, because wastewater, as defined, is just, there's no uh, uh, there's no signification that this waste in liquid state is moving or is transported from one place to another. All right. The definition is just descriptive of the state of the water, but as it is, there's no mention about whether it's moving or not, no. But it clearly shows that wastewater in itself would be in its static form, static state, no. There's no movement whatsoever mentioned here. But related to that, related to wastewater, is the term effluent. All right. Now effluent here now describes uh, some form of wastewater, no, that is now passed into a body of water, no, or it's now wastewater that's flowing out of a manufacturing plant, that's flowing out of a source. All right. And now the wastewater flowing, if it flows out of the source into a body of water, or into a land which has access to a body of water. Now the definition is descriptive of wastewater moving from one point to another. In fact, it's descriptive of the journey of waste coming from a source to a point of discharge, and the point of discharge is a water body. In fact, the act of facilitating the movement of wastewater from the source to a point of discharge is called discharge. Now, according to the law, discharge includes the act of spilling, leaking, pumping, pouring, emitting, emptying, releasing, or dumping any material into a water body or onto the land from which it might flow or drain into a said water. All right. Now it shows now that the act of discharging would be the one would be the act that is sought to be regulated here, no? Because from the generation of waste to the wastewater flowing out from a source to a point of discharge, no, it's the act of spilling, of leaking, of pumping, etc., which must be addressed, because once the wastewater reaches a body of water, now that body of water is subject of alteration of the properties of that body of water, and that alteration results into the impairment. It results into the impairment of the purity of the water in that water body and the quality in that water body. All right. Now, the next question then is, okay, we have identified the problem, we have identified the items, the contributing factors to the problem. Now, what the next question will be, what does the law protect? What's the coverage of the protection of this law of the Philippine Clean Water Act? All right. Now, in determining this, we now define the term water body. Okay, water body is the term that's subject of the protection of water pollution, because if we try to recall water pollution, the definition, it uses the term water body. All right. Alteration of any of the properties of the water body resulting to the impairment or of the purity or quality thereof. Meaning, the water body is the subject of protection, okay, of this law. And so, what is a water body? Okay, according to the law, according to the Philippine Clean Water Act, a water body is it includes both natural and man-made bodies of fresh, brackish, and saline waters. All right, meaning highlighted here is that water body under the law includes not only those natural water bodies, no, but also man-made water bodies. However, we must point out that not all man-made water bodies, not all man-made bodies of water may be considered as water bodies under the law, because under this definition, under this very definition, water bodies do not refer to those constructed, developed, and used purposely as water treatment facility or water storage for recycling and reuse. Alright, which are integral to the process industry or manufacturing. Which means that although there may be water in here, and although there may be clean water in here, alright, they are not for purposes of the operation of this law of the Philippine Clean Water Act. They are not considered as water bodies, meaning they are not part of the protection that is given, that is granted under this law. All right. Again, water body would include natural and man-made bodies of water, but not all man-made bodies of water may be considered as water bodies, no, under the law. Again, wastewater treatment facility or water storage for recycling and reuse, which are integral to the process industry or manufacturing, would not fall under this would fall under this legal term, right? Okay, now we mentioned about the acceptable state. All right, under the law, there's no promise that the water resources will be kept or even restored in their pure state. Okay, there are instances where it's inevitable to discharge something into water bodies, and so the the law has to compromise, and the law has to allow to some extent some industries to discharge into some water bodies. All right, but the law wants to address water pollution, meaning it wants to keep the water bodies from reaching that state, that polluted state. And so it's in the middle. That the goal of this law is to preserve the acceptable state of water. Now, why acceptable? Why is it acceptable? All right. It's acceptable because this law, no, in contrast to the Philippine Clean Air Act, this law recognizes that the water quality, no, that the state in which the water uh, must be preserved would vary. All right, and so water quality is defined under the law as the characteristics of water, no, which define its use. Okay, in terms of the physical, chemical, biological, etc. characteristics by which the acceptability of water is evaluated. All right? Here, acceptability of water is evaluated based on the use of the water in terms of the characteristics that are required or that are bearable for that kind of use. Okay, so in plainly speaking, it just shows that water, the use of water will vary depending. I mean, the acceptable state of the water would vary depending on what is the intended use of the water. The quality of the water may be different. The acceptable quality of the water may be different if, let's say, it's potable than just for washing dishes, for example, than for cleaning clothes, for example, than for washing your car, than for uh, uh, what else? Uh, Maintaining your garden, for example, etc., etc. So the quality or the acceptability of water will have to depend on the use and depending on the use, the acceptability based on the characteristics, physical, chemical, biological, etc., uh, will be evaluated. All right, the water quality. All right, and so if you try to reduce it in into an equation, you can see that characteristics of water, all right, and the use of the water will be the basis for the acceptability of the water or water quality, acceptability of the quality of the water or water quality. And so it's important, therefore, that we bear this in mind, especially that there are various uses for water, no? Okay, and so there will be various acceptable states of water. All right. Uh, in fact, here, according to the law, right, beneficial use may means the use of the environment or any element of the segment thereof conducive to the public and shall include here domestic, different, municipal, different, irrigation, different, power generation, fisheries, etc. These are all separate uses of water, and the quality or the acceptable quality of water will differ for domestic use, for fisheries, for livestock raising, for industrial, for recreational, etc., etc. All right. Okay. Now, how does the law seek to achieve the this acceptable water quality? How does it? How? What are the measures? What are the mechanisms that the law uses? Okay. To achieve the acceptable water quality, depending on the use. All right. The law achieves this by identifying the sources of water pollution, and after identifying the sources of water pollution, by imposing regulations on these identified sources of water pollution. And so in the next videos, we shall discuss the sources of water pollution, and we will also discuss the regulations that are imposed on these sources. All right, see you in the next video.